This whole dive into copper bullets has been fascinating for me, and you guys should check it out. Go to barnesbullets.com and have a look at the website and check out these bullets. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've found with them. But what they talk about is, like since 1989, they've been engineering the most technologically advanced hunting bullets and ammunition on the planet. And the more I shoot these suckers, the more I tend to believe it. They're manufactured here in the USA. In fact, their facility is down by my dad's ranch in central Utah. And what I've found is they really do create a little bit better penetration. They expand on impact, so the blood trails are quite a bit larger, and they do a little bit more damage, putting that animal down a little, faster. It's a way. In fact, on their website it says produce massive wound channels even in dense, thick-skinned game, and that is true. I found that to be true for sure. Check them out, and check out the episode I did with Barnes. So it's 191 with Mitch Cookson, and he gets into great detail about how these bullets are designed and why they're better. Definitely worth some consideration. Go to barnesbullets.com, have a look for yourself, make a decision, let me know what you think. See ya. Back a couple months ago, I did an episode with Brandon Maddox, who is the founder and owner of Silencer Central. You should listen to that episode. It's episode 197. I love this company, I love this brand, and I love the American-made product that Silencer Central produces. I use the Banish 30 on my hunting rifle, and if you guys follow me on Instagram and you saw that video I put together, you'll see that it's not like what Hollywood portrays it as. It's not like it silences the rifle down into nothing. But it makes a huge difference. Like, my ears don't ring when I shoot. The animals don't know where the shot is coming from. It disorients the sound. And Silencer Central makes it super easy for you guys. Jump on to silencercentral.com and pick one out. You could ship your rifle to them. They'll thread your barrel. They'll ship it back. This is like a 10-day process. And the ATF process is shortened significantly. It's like down to 48 hours or less. It's the best time ever to get a silencer on your weapon, and you should check it out because it really is a game changer. SilencerCentral.com is where you could find them, or you can call 866-891-4494, and they're happy to answer questions. It's crazy. They actually have people that answer their phone. Again, guys, go to SilencerCentral.com. It's one of my favorite sponsors out there. These guys are just absolutely world-class with these world-class products, and I can't recommend putting a silencer on your hunting rifle enough. Save your ears, disorient the sound in case you need another shot. I mean, it's a game changer, folks. Check it out. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Time studio right here in Northwest Montana, and brought to you by Eastman's Hunting Journals. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everybody's support of the show. Everything that we've been doing has, it all comes down to where we're at right now from a standpoint of we are neck deep into hunting season. And I know for a lot of you, hunting season kind of ends in October, depending on what state you're in or whatever. There's a lot going on in September and October, and then it kind of teeters off, and it just depends on where you're at. Like for me, here's kind of how my season has gone so far. I had September elk, and I had elk tags for both Montana and Idaho. And the thing is because I've only been in Montana for, a little over a year now, this is actually my first hunting season in Montana as a resident. And so the thing is I spent most of my time in Idaho with my elk tag because I know where the elk are at over there. And so I'm just kind of diving into Montana. The way they do this is pretty cool. So I had all of September with my archery tag, right? And that kind of bleeds into, I think, 2 weeks into October. So it's like a 6-week archery season for elk. And then it closes for a few days. I can't remember, maybe like a week or something. And then it opens for rifle at the end of October, and I have until December 1st to chase elk with a rifle. So that's what I've been doing. In fact, I am sitting here in my camo because I just got off the mountain. I was cutting a bull's tracks up high. It snowed a bunch the last few days, which is really nice because it's still not like so deep that you can't drive up there. But and it's easy to walk through still, but it's still fresh and new, so that like the tracks are super obvious. It's really easy to tell if it's a bull track or a bunch of cows or whatever. So that's what I've been doing. And I'm sitting here warming myself up here in the Broken Time studio because let me tell you, it's been cold the last few days, and it was still snowing up there when I just got off the mountain. So this episode, I kind of wanted to talk to you guys. You know, what's interesting is I didn't know that so many of you cared about what I was doing. And so I've had a lot of comments and inquiries asking about this whole thing I did where I switched to left-handed with my bow. And so I thought it would be kind of cool to kind of, give you guys like the story of as to how I came to this and how the season went as a lefty with a bow, not a leftist. There's a difference between a lefty with a bow and a leftist. And I promise you, I'm not a leftist, but I wanted to kind of share my experience with you because I think that it sounds like like you get on like Instagram, right? And everybody's sending those, they're sliding into my DMs with questions about, they've been considering doing this. I even had one guy that was like, hey man, because of, I don't remember how he explained it, but it was something about the way he started and like the bow he acquired was a left-handed bow, so he taught himself to do that, but he's actually right-eye dominant, so he's considering switching, but he's been doing this for a long time. So anyway, I thought it would be kind of cool to just kind of go through this process and talk to some of you guys, and I'll throw some stories in there to make it a little bit more entertaining for those of you that are not considering doing it. So, the first thing I'm going to tell you guys when it like, and this is just in general, like when you're up on the mountain, whether you're carrying around a bow or a rifle or a muzzle loader or whatever, make sure you have as many tags as you can, because here's kind of what's happened to me. In Idaho, the way that they do their tag system. So for those of you that don't know, I used to live in Idaho. I've spent most of my adult life in Idaho. Okay. And so I know Idaho very well, the panhandle of Idaho. And that is like, it's units 1 through 4A. Actually, that's not true. Units 1 through like 6. I know those units very well, and that's all the very far northern stretches of North Idaho, where what we refer to as the panhandle of Idaho or North Idaho. No, if you're south of Lewiston, I don't consider that North Idaho. So some of you that think that like, Grangeville is North Idaho, that's like North Central Idaho, in my opinion. Now, let's see how much hate mail I get from that. But the way that they do their tag system is because I was a resident there for so long. Before I moved out of Idaho, I bought the lifetime Idaho hunting license. So what that allows me to do is I can, just like a resident, go into like a Walmart and buy an over-the-counter tag. And I still pay the out-of-state price. So I think my elk tag was, I don't remember, like $650 or something like that. But I don't have to do that stupid thing that they do where everybody's on the website, the IDFG website, on like December 2nd or whatever that day is, trying to be in line to get a tag. I don't have to do it that way, which is super nice. Because I live, I'm in Montana, but I'm like a stone's throw away from the Idaho border. So, my thought was I could be up on the border of Montana and Idaho, and I can just kind of dive into whatever drainage. It doesn't matter what state it's in because I have a tag for both of them. And I also, it's hard to leave what you know. And I just know where all the elk are in the areas that I used to hunt on the Idaho side. So that's a long story here. We're getting off track here. Let me get us back on track. So anyway, Idaho does this thing where you can choose to buy an A tag or a B tag, and the A tag the A elk tag kind of caters more to archery hunting, right? And so you're going to get like, your 4 weeks, 4.5 weeks, whatever it is in September, and then rifle season opens in October, but you cannot hunt that because that's for B taggers. And then A taggers get like 5 days at the end of October to chase elk with a rifle. And so it's kind of cool. You can, go back and forth or whatever. And also the rifle hunters have like 6 days, I think, 5 or 6 days in September they can hunt elk with a bow. And so it just depends on what you really want to focus on. And a lot of guys, they'll get the B tag and they'll commit all 5 or 6 days, whatever they have in September, to chase an elk with a bugle tube and all that kind of stuff. And then if that doesn't work out, they'll just go back for the Idaho B tag, the rifle season, which opens like October 10th or whatever and runs through the 20th, I believe. So I had an Idaho A tag. So I hunted most of September. I had an okayish season. I didn't kill a bull in Idaho. I missed one. I'll get into that later. But so my buddy Kevin Estella, who was on the podcast the last episode, he comes up for bear hunt because he came up in the spring. We didn't tag out on a bear in the spring, so he came back up and hung out with me for 4 or 5 days, and we were up at this one bait site that I've had for years, and trying to get the bears to come in, and it's been a weird year for bears, man. I don't know. I'd be curious how other people in Idaho that were baiting would react to me saying that. I'm curious what your take is on it. Like for me, the bears were slim pickings this year. They weren't super active. They weren't super, it was so different than the last like 4 years. In terms of how many bears I've seen and opportunities we've had. It was just like a slow bear season, and so which was odd because there's so many bears out there. On my other cameras that are not on my bait sites, I've got bears all over the place. So anyway, Kevin comes up. It's the end of October. I don't remember the actual dates, but like remember I had my Idaho B tag, or I'm sorry, jeez, I'm gonna mess this all up. And my cat is standing on my studio table. Come here, buddy. Here, let's get you down. You can't be up there. You're gonna get fur everywhere, pal. All right. There we go. That's Hank. Anyway, had the Idaho A tag for elk, and we're up there hunting bear. I have an Idaho bear tag. So it's like 1 or 2 days before my A tag season opens for rifle when Kevin was here and we were sitting on that bait site. We're sitting there, we're waiting for bears. We had this bear come in behind us, and we set up in blinds. And I'm going to get into this a little bit later, the reason why I set up in blinds. But we set up in blinds because I feel strongly that the ground blinds really help keep that wind and your scent more contained. And so that's why I do that. Seriously, my cat is driving me crazy. Dude, go lay down. So in the wintertime, the studio kind of becomes the cat escape from the cold, according to my daughters. So I'm stuck with him. So anyway, it's like 2 days, something like that, before my A-tag allows me to kill elk with a rifle, which is fine. I wasn't that worried about it, but we're sitting there, me and Kevin, and all of a sudden I see some cows kind of pop out of the trees. They're heading towards the bait site, just feeding along. And what's with them is 2 decent bulls, not like monsters. And I don't exaggerate animals because I'm not a trophy hunter. I don't really care how big they were. But they were cool. They were cool bulls. There was like a decent 5-point and like kind of a raghead 4x5-ish kind of bull he had really dark antlers, super cool. Came into like 50 yards, totally could have smoked him. But my season wasn't open. I still had like a day or two before it opened. And so that was a bummer. Missed out on those elk. So my idea was, Kevin goes home. My idea is I'll go up there for those 5 days, and I will sit in that same spot and see if that same, handful of cows and a couple of bulls comes in. And so that's what I did. I sat up there. I set up in my blind again, exact same spot. I'm just hoping, one of these bulls, they'd be perfect for what I'm looking for to fill the freezer. Nothing crazy. You can't shoot cows on this tag. So anyway, like, Hank, seriously, man, you're really interrupting the story. He's biting my computer. Hang on. I'm going to pause this 1 second. Let's see how that works. He's like normally not the friendliest cat. It's weird. He's being super friendly. He wants to be a podcast star. So anyway, I go up there. I'm sitting on the bait site again. And my thought was, okay, I can, I've got a bear tag and I've got an elk tag, and hopefully one of those bulls are going to wander through, and I'm going to light them up and make them famous, and it'll be cool. It'll be fun. We can fill the freezer. Cause that's ultimately what my goal is. So no elk come through. I'm up there. It's the last day, and I'm sitting there. I'm like kind of surprised they didn't, because when Kevin and I saw them pass through, it's not like they skedaddled. We didn't scare them off. They had no idea we were there. I got some great footage. They had no idea we were there, and they just wandered off. They just kind of fed their way down the mountain and never knew we were there, and so it's not like we scared them off and whatnot. And so that was the hope, that they would come back and give me a shot. Well, it's the last day. I'm set up. It's kind of rainy outside. I'm in my my ground blind, and what I do is I pack this little. I got one of those one-person ground blinds, and they're like $60 or something, and it's perfect for packing in like a small chair, not too heavy, just something that works. And I get up there and I set up. The other advantage with a ground blind is if it's windy and kind of rainy or whatever, it keeps that wind off you. It breaks that wind up. It's not like, super cozy in there or anything, but it really does help. It just keeps that wind. It breaks that wind up from you. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. And guess what walks out? Again, I'm not a trophy hunter. I don't get like worked up about the size of a buck and or a bull or even a bear. I don't exaggerate. I did when I was younger. I'd exaggerate. A 2-point mule deer would end up being like a 200 class buck that I saw and couldn't get or whatever. I don't do that anymore. Because I don't care. I don't care if it's a monster buck or a bull or whatever. I'll just take him. That's not totally the case with deer. I'm a little bit more picky with deer. I'm quite a bit more picky with deer. In fact, I am looking for a mature animal when it comes to deer. But still, with that said, I still don't exaggerate when I tell you that on this public land mountain, this spot I've been hunting for years. In fact, it's the same area that the namesake of this studio came out of, where I killed old Broken Tines. Call him Broken Tines because he tumbled down a rock face and snapped a bunch of antlers off. So anyway, this suddenly I see movement kind of at my 1 o'clock looking out this blind, and it's like, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. And here comes this giant buck, whitetail buck, public land, mountain whitetail buck. And I'm not kidding you. When I first saw him coming out through the brush, I thought it was an elk, and I'm like, okay, last day, here we go. We're gonna get us a bull. Nope, it was a giant whitetail buck, and just a super busy wreck, super tall. This guy comes out and lays down in the brush, and when I say big, again, this is a public land buck. This is not like, hold on, guys. Okay, sorry about that. I have never had this cat give me such a hard time. This cat is super standoffish and just usually leaves me alone. He's like all over my shit right now. It's crazy. Where did I leave that off? Anyway, I would score this buck at about 160-ish. And again, this is not exaggerating. 160 for North Idaho public land is an incredible buck. That really is. I am super stoked if I shoot a 120 or a 130 up here. At 160, you're really pushing it. So he lays down like 60 yards in front of me, and all I could see are antlers sticking out above the brush. His horns just go on for miles. There's just trash all over him. Mostly typical. He had a couple little funky things going on that I just couldn't quite pinpoint even in the binos. And then his buddy walks out, who is also a super nice buck, 140-ish class-wise, and he lays down as well. Well, guess what? I have a bear tag and a an elk tag, but I do not have a deer tag for Idaho. And so all I could do was just sit there and try to get pictures, but they were 60 yards away, and an iPhone just kind of sucks at getting pictures like that. And I know the old saying, pics or it didn't happen or whatever, but I did try. You could see where I tried to get pictures. You just can't make out the antlers when they were laying there. Finally, they get up and again, this is like October, like 28th or 29th, I think, last week sometime. And, what was interesting is when they got up, it was like they kind of offended each other just being around each other, and they kind of started sparring a little bit. One started rubbing this brush, this alder brush that was kind of near there, started raking the alder brush a little bit, and then they just kind of touched antlers one time, fairly hard too, like not just a little light tap, fairly hard. And the bigger one clearly intimidated the smaller one enough to let him know, hey, now this not going down right now, son. Whatever, however a whitetail talks smack, and then they just, they were fine, and they just kind of fed their way out of my sight. So the point is to this whole story, it was actually, I'm super thankful I got to see that, because guys, I never see bucks like this, the bucks of that stature. It was super educational too, because you will just never understand how freaking cagey a big mountain whitetail buck is. They are so tuned into their environment. They're so tuned into when they were laying there in the brush, a squirrel, because of my bait site, I've got popcorn in there. So, the squirrels loved it. And the squirrels would hit that bait, or the barrel, and make a little ting sound. Those bucks, both of them would turn and look. And like when they were laying there, a bird flew by, they were tuned into that. Every little thing they were aware of. And I couldn't even move because they were so close, and I didn't want them to run off. I really wanted to get a picture of them. And it's just amazing watching these animals when they're that mature, that wise, and that tuned into their environment. And they're just so cagey. I just, and it leads to another point. One thing where that bait site is a long way from home, and it's almost all dirt road. I leave my house, I go up this dirt road that takes me to the top of this pass, and once you cross over onto that pass and you're on the other side of, the downside, the other side, that's you're in Idaho. And then from there, it's like an hour and a half of dirt road time to get to this bait site. Not quite an hour and a half, probably an hour and 15. But it's a long drive. And so I spent a lot of time on these roads, and you never see bucks like this, first of all, off the road. But it's to the point that I'm making that I spent a lot of time on these roads, and I saw the same trucks with the same dudes in them driving back and forth and back and forth. Like I never saw these trucks parked. And the only thing that was open at this time was either if you had an elk A tag for Idaho, or if you had a deer tag. Deer season was open, which I did not have a deer tag, or I'd have one hell of a story to tell you guys, and a cool shot to put on the old Instagram, But anyway, you guys got to get out of your trucks. This whole road hunting in North Idaho for elk and deer, I don't see it. I don't understand why people think that that's an effective way to hunt. First of all, it's just not. You're not going to find a monster buck. You're not going to find a bull just dumbly standing right off the road. They hear you coming long before you will ever see them, and they live there full time. I have spent hours, like if it was a pilot's license, you know how they have to rack up the hours? If you have to rack up the hours on a dirt road, like I'll bet you I have as much, if not more, than anybody else out there for like my age, which I'm just a young man in my prime, right? But I've spent a lot of time on these dirt roads, and I just don't ever see, I've seen in all the years doing this in North Idaho. I'll be North Idaho specific because I know it kind of changes if you're like in the wide open country of Wyoming or something. But like in the last over a decade, I have spent cruising these roads, getting to my hunting spots. I've seen 2 bull elk from the road that like weren't just a glimpse, like oh man, there's one. It's nighttime and he runs across the road. I've seen a few of those, but in daylight. And they were both during archery season, so there was nothing you could do. So the point is I just don't understand you guys. If you're taking the time to get out there, why in the hell are you just driving around? Get out like 100 yards off the road, and you'll start seeing animals. Anyway, I don't understand it. So, anyway, that was just kind of a long way of me explaining. Don't do what I did and cheap out and not get all the tags that are available. I should have just bought the deer tag, and I would have had a really great buck. I'll never see that buck again. I don't know if I'll ever have an opportunity like that on a public land mountain whitetail buck. I've lost sleep over this buck. He was just a monster. One day I hope to kill a buck like that. Specifically on public land. It was just a great experience, and I learned a lot about these animals, and just watching them what a time. It was a great time. So anyway, let's talk about switching to the left-handed bow for a minute. So I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to this. I've been bow hunting since roughly 2005. I think I'd been out of the Marines for, 18 months or something. Shooting rifles bores me. And I'm not saying that in any kind of way other than to say that, like, I just, I did it I've been shooting rifles my entire life. I don't get a kick out of going to the range and shooting for hours on end. I just don't get a kick out of it anymore. So I was like 18 months out of the Marines, and, I'm like, okay, I don't want to shoot a rifle all the time. I'm going to try bow hunting. And this was back in the day, bows were a lot less technical back then. So I went and bought a bow, and because, I was, in the Marine Corps, they train you left eye, right eye, dominant kind of stuff, and they teach you how to shoot that way. They came to the determination that because I had so much experience with a rifle, that I was left eye dominant, but they're going to keep me shooting right because it was so second nature to me at that point. And so I kept shooting right eyed. With a rifle, and I still do today. And I was I'm not saying this to impress you. I'm saying this to impress upon folks that if you are left eye dominant, you can still be very effective with a rifle, in my opinion, because I was a 3rd award expert rifleman in the Marines. I have this level of confidence with a rifle that has never let me down. Not to say that I haven't missed a couple of times or made a bad shot or whatever. I certainly have. But if an animal, I've noticed since I've been out of the service, if an animal presents me with a half decent shot and I'm rifle hunting, that animal is most likely dead. And that's just been the track record. I don't miss very often. And I'm not lacking in confidence with a rifle enough to switch to like shooting lefty. Okay. That does not translate to my archery. I have never in the almost 20 years I've been bow hunting, been able to transfer this confidence that I've had with a rifle to my bow. I haven't, and I've really tried. I've spent many hours and many thousands of arrows over the years practicing with my bow, and while I was lethal enough to, make it happen sometimes, I still lacked that. There's just this confidence thing. And I'm sure most of you know what I'm referring to. This comes from experience and time behind your bow and or rifle, practice, like my buddy, that has, I've got a lot of friends that are way more confident with a bow than I am with my bow. And the weird part is I've been shooting bows longer than them. I'll put it that way. Like my buddy Roger Holscher, he's down in, he's a cop that's been on the show down in the Boise area. And he's like a sniper level confidence guy with his, he really geeks out with his rifle, right? He could shoot 600, 700, 800 yards, kills bears at crazy distances. and deer and elk and all that kind of stuff. And he's a great, like if I have a deeper question about shooting rifles, he's the guy I call. With my bow, I've talked to like Joel Turner with his Shot IQ, and I took that course, the online course, and I've done all this stuff, and still I've missed a lot of bulls. I've wounded a few bulls, liver hit them when I shouldn't have, kind of thing, like the one right before my truck fire a few years back. That should have been a lethal, total knockdown, just a gimme kind of shot. That bull should have been piled up 40 yards from there. That arrow was a complete pass through, but for some reason I liver hit him at like 26 yards broadside. And I just like that. And what happens is, like, on my little range at home that I set up, I'm pretty good. I would get confident, but getting in the field, for some reason, I knew that I had like this shaky past with my bow. I've sent arrows right over the backs of deer and elk or right behind them. And I always would blame it on something like I deflected it off a limb, which has happened. I have deflected a few arrows off of limbs, which saved some elk's lives. They've had near-death experiences because of that. But it just goes back to this confidence thing. And my confidence has just never been there with a bow. I've just never had that confidence that I have with a rifle. If I get, like today, I found this, I start cutting this bull track. There's this bull, he'd just been through the snow, and he was dropping down into this drainage. I grabbed my rifle, parked my truck, and I'm going down after him. It started getting dark on me, so I kind of backed out of there. I think he's going to be there tomorrow. I'm going to go try to find him. But I had no thought as to whether or not I can knock a bull over with this rifle at up to roughly 500 yards or so. And the rifle I was packing today was my 300 Win Mag. Lots of animals have lost their lives to this particular rifle. I've had it for a long time. I'm kind of old school that way. I get stuck on a weapon. I've got a couple of them, but anyway, when I'd get out of my truck and a bull would bugle back at me with my bow, that confidence, like it went from like the confidence that I had where I didn't even have to think about it with the rifle. It became this concern as I was closing the distance with a bull. It became this concern. Okay, I need to make sure I have this perfect shooting lane. I need to make sure that the string is touching my whatever, and when I'm pulled back, I need to do the thing like Joel Turner. Here we go, right before I release, to make sure I don't punch the trigger, so I know I can hit this bull. Just never had it. I just, like, it was always this concern. So when that bull that I liver hit, I told you about a couple of years ago when I had the truck fire. So for those of you that don't know, I liver hit a bull, went up the next day to find him or whatever, and couldn't find him. And went up the next day to find him, and my truck caught on fire, and had to, like, my truck burned to the freaking ground. I lost a bunch of hunting gear. It was quite the deal. I've got pictures of it on the Instagram if you want to see it. It's a 2016 Toyota Tacoma. Not throwing them under the bus or anything, but I'm just stating it was a pretty nice truck. Shouldn't have caught fire, but still don't really know what happened. But then a few days after that, I have an F350 as well. So I took the F350 up there, and I did finally find that bull. Obviously, the meat was toast. Unless you were born yesterday, you're very well aware of the fact that a lot of companies spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising and just their overly proudness of, if that's a word, their name recognition. This is not the case with Hoffman boots, guys. Don't go drop $500 on a good pair of boots when you can go to hoffmanboots.com and check out the Hoffman Explorers. They start at $370. I could save you 10% off of that by using promo code Huntsman10. Guys, I've been traipsing through the mountains of the western United States for almost a decade in these boots. They're totally waterproof. There's no break-in period. They're every bit as good as those high-dollar boots out there that you see for a lot less. So don't waste your money on the other stuff. These boots have everything you need for a lot less, and I wouldn't steer you in the wrong direction. I wouldn't recommend them if I don't use them myself and don't absolutely love them. Check it out at hoffmanboots.com. Promo code is Huntsman10. And so it was like in that moment, I made a decision that something's got to change. Something's got to change. I have to have a level of lethal confidence with my bow, or this thing's got to just get, something's got to give. I can't keep doing that. That was like the second bull that I've wounded. No, the third bull that I've wounded, and wasn't able to recover. And that had to change. And I always tell you guys, I will fess up my failures long before I brag about my successes with you guys on this show. And I've always done that. And I never want to come across as some like, I'm an amazing egomaniac type kind of hunter that kills everything, because I'm just not. I'm not that guy. So yeah, I will fess up. I've wounded 3 bulls, and not been able to recover them in time. Meaning is what I mean. Well, one of them I never found. I don't know what the hell happened. I think aliens abducted him, because I thought it was a good hit, but we tracked blood for, days on this sucker and never did find him. So anyway, when that last bull that I killed and wasn't able to recover because I'd liver shot him, I made the decision then. I was already suspicious. I'm getting so excited. I'm like getting tongue tied here. I was already suspicious that I needed to switch to left, because I knew I was hopelessly left eye dominant. And so I did. This year I got the Matthews Lift bow, which is a great bow, by the way. They don't sponsor the show, but I do really like this bow. I've been really impressed with it. I've been a PSE guy most of my life, and I switched to this Matthews bow. Man, what a smooth, fast, hard punching bow. I just love this bow. And so I got the Lift in the size 33. I think I'm set at like 69 pounds or something like that. And I'm running this. I don't know, it's like a 340 spine arrow. It's an Easton arrow with the Vantage Point Omega broadheads. This thing is just sweet. I've got the top of the line sights on it. I'm finally old enough where I can afford a really high end bow, and I spared no expense on this one. And so it's been awesome. But I got it home. I had it paper tuned at the shop. My buddy Pete over at Arrowworks in Clark Fork, Idaho, set this bow up for me, and he dialed this sucker in. And he's an older guy. He's been doing this a long time. He's like, you will not regret doing this. He said, he's like, your first few shots, you're going to feel so awkward that you're going to want to switch back to your right. And, but just keep going. And I'm glad he said that, because I tell you what I did at home, you guys know, we live on kind of a homestead here. We've got 15 acres and it's in the woods. What I did is I made my own like 3D archery range, and I've got, a big buck, I've got a bear, I've got some kind of weird pig, I've got an elk, I've got a raccoon that hugs a tree. That's a cool target. I've got a coyote, all these targets set up out there. So me and my daughters go out there and just, throw arrows all day. It's a lot of fun. I get home with this brand new bow, left-handed, and I pull it back to shoot my first shot as a left-handed bow hunter. And immediately my initial reaction was, there is no way I can do this. I cannot switch to left. It's like so deeply seated into me to be a right-handed shooter that like when I pulled it back, everything was off. I had like internal alarms going off in my body. And I need to drink water here. I'm like losing my voice, guys. Usually I have a guest who, talks more than I do. So I got the range set up. And that really was my initial thought was, this isn't going to work. I'm just too comfortable with a right bow or right-handed bow. And I'm going to put this down and go get the PSE back out and start shooting that, because season's like, a month away. But Pete's voice kept going in my head to just keep going. So I shot it. I hit the target. And, but I was like, I don't know what I did. I think I was a little to the left or whatever. I was shooting the buck target. And I was a little to the left where it hits outside of where that little, replacement foam thing is in the middle. And I'm like, man, see, I'm not even accurate with this. And so I'm like, okay, let's just keep trying. I threw another arrow. Bam, dead center. I threw another arrow, bam, dead center. And it like every time I pulled the bow back, I was getting more comfortable using my left eye. But I'll tell you a couple big differences. Was I found the target through the peep sight and sights much faster than when I was shooting right-handed. I would just go right to it. There was like I'd kind of have to search around when I was shooting with my right. And I didn't, that completely went away. And so I went and grabbed my arrows, and then I just went ahead and went through my whole range the first day. All those targets I was just telling you guys about. And I couldn't miss. I couldn't miss. And second day I go out there, and I've got a couple of targets where I can throw back at like 60 yards. So I went back at 60 yards. The 60-yard pin was a little off. So I missed the first one. I made the adjustment. Bam. Started hitting every arrow I flung at 60 yards. I nailed it. Like dead nuts. Like, Robin Hood the cartoon where he's like hitting the back of his own arrow. I was kind of like that. And I was like, this is amazing, because what's going on is when I'm drawn back, my eye is like instinctively going right to the place it needs to be to get that sight picture, sight alignment, all those things that need to happen. And all of a sudden, after, I would say 4 days max of shooting as a left-handed archer, after like 4 days, all of a sudden, I had the same confidence level that I have with the rifle that I was talking about earlier. I couldn't miss. I would go out there, and I've got it set up so I'm shooting some downhills, like an uphill. I put that raccoon target way up so I can shoot high. And man, I couldn't miss. Everything I shot, I was nailing it. And so the thing is that you have to do is you really do, and I would recommend this, like for anybody that does the switch. First of all, if you're going to do the switch, get you a high-end bow. Get a higher-end bow. Don't try to go buy some chintzy piece of crap from the pawn shop that just happens to be a left-handed bow and think that that's going to do it. I really do believe that is what you need to do. You need to spend a little bit of money, get a more high-end bow, and do it the right way. And I don't care if it's Matthews or whatever. There's a lot of high-end bows out there. Just get a higher-end bow, and you need to spend every day shooting that thing for like a month. And because you see a lot of guys like influencers or whatever on social media, and they're shooting every day. They're shooting every day. Not all of us have that luxury normally, right? I don't shoot my bow every freaking day. I don't really, shooting bows is not like a hobby of mine. It's only a necessity because it's the tool that I use to hunt, and I want to be lethal. That's the only reason I don't get enjoyment out of it. In fact, it kind of bores me. But I made the determination that I'm going to be as lethal as I can with this bow. And so you really do need to spend like every day. And what you're going to notice is every day that tendency to grab the handle of the bow with your left hand and draw with your right goes totally away. And all of a sudden you have this tendency to switch that. All of a sudden you're grabbing the handle with your right hand and pulling with your left. I also recommend, if you're right-handed, to set your bow down a few notches to start. Because I had mine set at like 72 initially, and it was tough pulling that back with my left arm. And because my right arm, I'm right-handed, so I'm a lot stronger with my right arm, right? And so I set it down to 60, and then I cranked it back up. I think I ended it at 69 when season started, and it was fine. That was totally fine to pull back. I could have gone up more, but I mean, I don't know. I didn't see any reason to really. So practice every day for like a month with your left-handed bow, and because the idea behind that is by the time season rolls around and you go, a week without shooting your bow, and all of a sudden an elk shows up, you don't want to be in a situation where it's not second nature to draw with your left arm. So that's kind of the point of that, is you really want that second nature feeling where it's like muscle memory, man. Oh, here comes a screaming bull. He's coming in. His eyes are rolled back. He's slobbering. He's blowing out, everything on the mountain because he's bugling so loud and like your ears are ringing from it. Man, don't get fumbly because you're still in this mode where you draw with the wrong hand, because you've switched to a left hand, or for that left-handed guy, left-handed shooter that is right-eye dominant, if he switches to the right, same concept, right? So that's what I recommend with that. I really highly recommend that you just spend a lot of time so it just becomes muscle memory. And I guess how it went was, I'm just as confident with my bow as I ever was with my rifle now. And I went through an entire season. I never had an issue where I kind of mistook which hand I should be drawing my bow with. Didn't have any problems with any of that. And I had a really close encounter with this bull. I had bugled, he had answered, but he was in like this funky little area where the wind was kind of swirly. So I sat up on the mountain for a couple hours above him until that wind kind of switched and calmed down. And I went down there and I bugled again. He answers, and he kind of snuck up on me. He surprised me how quick he was on me, because I was going through this dark timber, and it was almost like this meadowy kind of area. And all of a sudden I see this brown blob, out of the corner of my eye. And I turn my head, and lo and behold, there's a big old bull standing there. Nice 6-point, And because I was in the real dark timber, it was real shadowy, kind of, starting to become evening time and whatnot. He didn't quite know what it was. He knew, he saw me, but he didn't know that I was like a dude instead of a bull, because I'd been making all this noise. And so I kind of dropped behind this tree, and he's roughly 35 yards or so, but he's frontal towards me and was kind of behind some like huckleberry brush that I didn't want to shoot through. So I waited for him. He finally got sick of it. He wouldn't come any closer. I just needed him to take like 10 steps, and I could have drawn back and got him. But he instead turned around and went into this alder thick. And so what I did, if you guys listen to some of those School Septembers with Dirk, he talks about that wee-eye whiz-bang thing. And so I grabbed my bugle tube, I screamed at the top of my lungs, and ran towards this bull. And he popped back out, but he was a little further away now. Popped back out, and because I was exposed, still in the shadows, but he knew he had me pinned. He knew exactly where I was, but he was just staring at me broadside. And so I had to guess. I couldn't get my rangefinder out, so I had to guess. And I'm like, man, he's roughly 40 yards or so. I draw back, and that arrow starts flying, and it was like slow motion. I thought, okay, this bull is going to die. That arrow is going perfect. I couldn't have put that thing on like a remote control and guided it any better than the way I'd shot that. The problem was I guessed him at 40, and he was like 52, I think, is what he ended up being once I figured it out. That arrow dropped and hit some deadfall right in front of him. In fact, I lost my broadhead still stuck in that damn tree. And so, but I got the arrow out. Anyway, hit the tree. Bull didn't like that 1 sec and disappeared out of my life forever. But it would have been a perfect shot if he was a little closer. And the mistake I made was I misgauged his distance. If I would have done that with a right-handed bow, I feel like that arrow would have hit him in the ass or something. I just wouldn't have hit. I wouldn't that shot. I would have regretted it as soon as I pulled my release. As soon as that arrow snapped, I would have regretted the shot. And in fact, I don't even know if I would have taken it, but my confidence is so much higher as a left-handed bowman. I just highly recommend anybody out there that's on the fence thinking about, if you, I don't care if you've been 2-3 decades shooting right-handed, but you know that you're left-eye dominant. I'm telling you, it's worth it. I came at this totally open-minded from the standpoint of, I really don't know if this is going to be beneficial. it just, sorry, I really am losing my voice here. I really didn't know if it was going to be beneficial. I thought, this could be a huge mistake, waste of money, all this stuff. And it just, man, cause I had a lot of people, like when I posted about it earlier in the year, there was a lot of people that highly recommended I do it. And a lot of people that highly recommended that I don't do it. I was getting both sides, and these were coming from like people with a lot of credibility, in my opinion. I mentioned Roger. He had an opinion on it, and other people had like all these opinions about whether or not I should do it. And then I'm kind of finding out that maybe some of these guys have never actually done that. They've never been a left eye dominant right hand shooter that considered going to a left handed bow. In fact, when I first that thought first crossed my mind years ago, I was like, that'd be dumb. I'm fine. I could shoot just fine with my right handed bow. Blah blah blah. I've killed a bunch of deer with my bow, and all this stuff. This was years ago, and I just, man. It was so worth it. I'm like so looking forward to next season. I didn't get out much this year. My work got kind of in the way of my hunting time. I started my own company thinking that it's going to free me up to go hunt more. Nope. It was the opposite. I couldn't just leave. And so I kind of screwed myself out of some hunting time, but I know how to set it up a little bit better next year so I can basically take the whole archery season off. And that's what I plan to do, and I can't wait because I really am. It was worth every penny and every second I spent getting ready for season, switching to a left-handed bow. It really does. It makes a huge difference. Don't discount the magnitude as to what your eye dominance can be when you're an archer. I don't know that it's all that critical with a rifle, because I shoot when I have a rifle up and I'm looking through the scope, I'm looking through the scope with my left eye. I'm not shooting with my right eye. And I think that is why I've been so deadly with my rifle is I am using my left eye. I don't know if that's proper or not. I have no idea. I don't remember what they said when I had all the formal training in the military. But I know open sights or scope, I'm using my left eye, but I'm using a right-handed rifle, and I'm shooting it right-handed, and it just works for me. And I'm not gonna don't try to fix what's not broken kind of thing, So I'm gonna stick with that. So let me spend just a couple minutes too. I'm gonna transition. Oh, by the way, if any of you have any questions on that, or need some like specific suggestions as to I guess the process of switching, hit me up. Feel free to email me at jim@thewesternhuntsman.com, which, by the way, so a lot of you have emailed me recently, and trust me, I am getting those, but between hunting season and trying to keep up with the podcast and my day job and everything else, I haven't had a lot of time. I'm going to get back to a lot of you. So I apologize for the lack of response. I always hate it when I can't get back to people, but I am working on it. But I am really working hard, trying to get something tagged out. I haven't really killed anything other than a turkey this year. So I'm kind of sick of that record, and I'm ready to break it, and I need to just get out there and focus and hunt. So, in fact, I might be guiding. My buddy has an outfit up here where I live, and he needs an extra guide. So I'll probably be doing that next week. But hit me up, jim@thewesternhuntsman.com, if you guys have questions about switching to a left-handed bow. I'd be happy to talk about it. I feel like I can go on for like 2 hours about it, but I don't want to bore everybody to death. Because the other thing that has been piling up in my messages and some of the emails is apparently some of you think that I'm one hell of a whitetail hunter in, Western mountain whitetail hunter. I'm not. I'm good at it, but I'm not like I've had guys like John Gabriel and Troy Pottinger on the show. Like last year, we did the Schools of November with those two. You guys should go back and listen to those episodes. But I'll give you the basics as to what I do, and keep in mind, I am not John Gabriel or Troy Pottinger or like, some of these guys that are absolute killers of monster bucks all the time. My advice is for people that either you're new or you're like me, where you just want to get out there and you want to get something. You want to get some meat in the freezer. I don't really shoot spikes or 2 points, or hell, I don't even shoot little 3 points. I kind of have like a 4-point minimum when it comes to mountain whitetails, and it's only strictly because that's a personal thing for me. I'm trying to get bigger and bigger bucks as I get better and better at whitetail hunting. I have not been whitetail hunting super long. I think I'm like 7 or 8 years into it. So every season I get a little bit better and kill a little bit bigger buck, and I've gotten a couple of really good ones. And so here's kind of what I do, guys. If you're just looking to get out there and try to find a whitetail, remember those 2 big bucks I was telling you that were in front of my blind last week and how cagey they were? I hear a lot of people talk about how they're going to still hunt for a whitetail, and you certainly can. I've actually been successful with that. In fact, one of the bigger whitetail I killed, I was hiking in on snowshoes with my bow during the late season, and this guy, we just kind of intersected, and he stood there long enough for me to get an arrow in him. But anyway, this is more for those that want to get out there and just find a decent buck. You're not looking for a monster, and you're not necessarily looking for a dink, but you'll take a dink. That's cool too, whatever. Still hunting is not my process, as I was saying there. That particular circumstance was a total accident. I wasn't still hunting. I was just working my way to a kind of a blind I had set up over a trail that I had a camera that I knew bucks were moving through. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about cameras and the use of cameras. If you're good with using cameras, I highly recommend them. Set up cameras in pinch points and trails and finger ridge tops, areas that look like deer are going to be passing through. I like cameras. I like to know what's in the area and what their movement is. It can give you a good sense as to when they're moving, when they're coming through, all that kind of stuff. But here's how I hunt for whitetail. I have that famous ground blind I was telling you. I use a ground blind because I really do think that the ground blind really helps contain your scent. So if you get some swirling winds, it doesn't seem to affect it. I've had bucks walk almost close enough that I could reach out and smack them from my ground blind. And I'm not exaggerating. I've had lots of does do that, but I've specifically had bucks walk right past it and have no idea I was sitting there. So that's why I use a ground blind. I try to get at least, I don't know. I don't know if I have like a specific rule, but roughly you want to get at least a half a mile from the road. And I mean, more is better. Truly, more is better. I'm usually about a mile off the road to where I find an area that the bucks are comfortable walking through. The big bucks will not walk by the roads. You'll rarely ever see a big buck right off a dirt road. Whitetail. Mule deer is a little different. But so I usually look for a spot, and it's usually like a finger ridge or the crux of like a drainage or like some kind of pinch point where maybe a couple of trails are going together. If you're rifle hunting, I recommend an area where you can see a little bit more country because you've got a further reach. And that's kind of what I've been doing this year. I'm going to be rifle hunting a lot for whitetail. And so I'm setting up in areas where I have, some openings where I can watch. Those openings are going to be more for the smaller bucks. The big bucks are going to stay in more shooting lane type areas, pinch points, the bottom of a drainage or the top of like a finger ridge where they're going from one drainage to another. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. You're going to set up your blind first thing in the morning. And it should just be one of those easy set. I, pull it out of the bag and it pops right up, and I put my little chair. I got one of those little hunting chairs. And that's how I get in there. I sit in that blind all day long. This is not something I was able to do when I was younger. I had too much impatience, but I've learned that, you can get a good book downloaded on your phone. The hell's the name of that app? I don't remember. My wife got it for me. Kindle something? Kindle. I think it's Kindle. And you can get, those books and you just read them that way. Or I've packed a lot of paper books in there. They're just a little heavier and you're going to take your phone anyway, I'm sure. just little things to keep you busy enough, but don't get so distracted with whatever you're doing that you're missing bucks in front of you. I have like a policy. I'll read half the page and then I look around and I check in my binos and I'm constantly watching. I'm not, and keep in mind, if you've never been out there, you're not looking to find a deer. What you're looking for when you're looking up and out there, you're looking for movement. This time of year, if you see does, you can get a little excited because there's probably a buck around. Okay, for anybody that doesn't know, November is the whitetail rut. Geez, I can't talk today. Whitetail rut here out west, especially up in the mountains. So you want to be constantly scanning. Don't leave your visual, whatever you're doing. Don't look at your book for 10 minutes straight. Don't look at your phone playing a game or something. Anything like that. Be constantly scanning every 2 minutes max. 2 minutes is like my max. And you will be surprised sometimes, like the other day, I was sitting there, I'm reading my phone, and I look up, there's a doe 30 yards in front of me. Like, where'd she come from? And, you don't hear them, especially those big bucks. You are not going to hear those guys. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm sitting there all day. I pack sandwiches. I don't do like peak refuels or anything because it makes a lot of noise when you're doing that with a jet boil. And so I'm packing like sandwiches and things like that. I take an empty water bottle. I might gross some of you out. And I pee in the bottle, and then I dump it out at the side of the blind. And I dump it on the downhill side so it doesn't come, coming in to the blind or whatever, because I've got my pack on the ground and all that kind of stuff. I drink water, and I just watch. If you have does coming up in front of you, watch them. Like, don't just like, they're does and go back to, a video game or something on your phone. Like, watch and learn what those does are doing. You'll learn so much about animal behavior by doing that. And again, if there's does, it's November. There's most likely a buck in the vicinity. The bucks will generally not be on the same path or trajectory that the does are on. It's like he's orbiting somehow. He's just in their vicinity, and he's usually going to be on a separate trail or off trail. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The other thing I like about being in a ground blind is when I do notice does or something moving through the area, I could turn my head and scratch my face and adjust my hat and all that kind of stuff, and they don't see any of that, okay, because it's all dark in there. So that's a huge plus. So look around when those does are coming through. Look, keep an eye all around where those does are at. Watch the does and what they're looking at. If there's a buck around, they're going to make a bunch of glances towards that buck. They're going to turn and look, and they're going to watch for him, and they're going to see where he's at. They're going to see, is he still coming? Is he still over here? Where is he at? Or they're going to hear things that you might not. So maybe they don't know that a buck is in the area, but all of a sudden they hear this buck coming that you will not hear because they communicate that. I don't know what they do. I'm not a biologist, but they can hear each other coming for a long way. And the does, especially the most mature one, will stop what she's doing and she will stare in that direction. And if you watch the direction where she's staring, there is a good chance that a buck is going to give you a visual. Okay? So look for areas, pinch points, finger ridges, visible lanes, etc. Areas that you have a lot of vantage point. And I'm not talking about like mule deer vantage point. I'm not talking about glassing across a drainage. I'm talking about small meadows. I'm talking about open faces on one side that is not very far from you. Whitetail hunting is a little more up close and personal than mule deer hunting. So keep that in mind, okay? Okay, so in terms of rattling and calls and scents, here's what I do. Last week of October through about November 12th or so, around my birthday is November 10th. That's when I'm rattling, okay? Rattle early, the first 2 weeks of November or late October. That has been a lot more fruitful for me than deer bleats are like useless right now. Okay, I'm recording this on November 3rd. So yeah, I don't use any of those kind of calls. I don't do any grunts. I don't do any of that. I just rattle. That works. It works great. You'll get a couple of different types of reactions. You'll get a lot of small, curious bucks that just want to see what kind of action is going. And if you want to shoot one of those, more power to you. If you don't, let those bucks come through, and if they show up, but you're after a bigger one, do not do anything to spook that buck off. It's like they have, it's almost like they have a deer Facebook or something they post. Hey, there was a deer picking, or a hunter picking his nose in a ground blind right here. Everybody else stay away, because if one buck busts you, the does are a different story. They can bust you sometimes. I still don't recommend it, but if a buck busts you, I swear that sight goes south, and you won't see any more bucks there. That's just a personal opinion. So rattle, and if those smaller bucks come in to check it out and you don't want to shoot one, just wait, let that buck lose interest and let him work his way out of there, and then rattle again once he's gone. Don't rattle where he can pick you off and notice your deer blind. And, I don't recommend those real boxy deer blinds either, by the way. Deer blinds that are box shaped get picked up on. The elk and the deer will kind of notice those. Use the ones that are more rounded. They're harder for them to pick those up and notice them. Sometimes you will get busted just because they use that area all the time and they notice it and it's just out of place, and they know it's out of place. So that's kind of what we're doing there. And then after roughly around the 10th to 12th or so, that's when I start doing the grunts and the deer bleats, and I kind of stop rattling for the most part. By the way, if you guys have listened to the show, Phelps Game Calls is a huge sponsor. For my deer calls, here's what I use. If you get on phelpsgamecalls.com and go to deer calls, I have the Alpha Pro grunt call. I have the DOA doe bleat, and I have the Smash and Clash rattle bag. Those three things, and they have some other products there. Some of them I haven't tried, but I tell you, the three that I just mentioned are really good, and they work very well. You can use promo code Huntsman10 if you want to pick some of those up. So that will save you 10% off and all that kind of stuff, and it helps the show, so I appreciate that. Anyway, those are the three calls that I use. But I do throw out some deer bleats, those little the doe bloats, doe bleats. It's called the DOA doe bleat. I use those. I kind of do, 1 to 2 seconds on those, and I'll do like 2 or 3 of them, and then I just sit there and shut up, wait for like 15 minutes. And a lot of times a random buck will just come cruising by, and sometimes he's not very big. And if you don't want to shoot a little guy, that's totally fine. Just let him, again, just like the rattling, let him work his way out of there and do another doe bleed after that. Some of the grunts, I personally have not had a ton of success with grunts, but it has called in some bucks, and they're usually bigger. And that's just kind of a real quick, not super loud, and not a bunch of them. If you sit out there and listen to what the whitetail are doing, just kind of mimic them. That's all you got to do. Just kind of like if you've listened to this show where we talk about mimicking the bull with your calls, and like the bull, maybe he starts chuckling a bunch, start doing a bunch of chuckles. It'll excite that bull a lot more. It's kind of the same thing with whitetail, except for you're not answering or communicating with them. You're just sending the noises out to advertise the fact that, like, for example, if you're using the deer bleat, the doe bleat, you're just advertising the fact that you're a doe and maybe you're looking for a buck, and it's the rut, and it's going to make them curious. So it's not like you're like going to grunt, and then a whitetail buck's going to grunt back at you, and you're going to grunt him into a big fight, and he's going to come and want to come in and fight like an elk. That's not what we're doing. You're not trying to communicate to them specifically for a response. You're just trying to advertise the fact that you're either a big buck making a, protecting a doe. You're painting this picture that you're protecting a doe, and or you are a doe that is advertising that you're there. Maybe you're going into estrus cycles or something like that. A couple other notes on setting up in a blind. That's how I hunt whitetail, guys. Again, that is like the basic synopsis. Oh, I do use buck fever synthetics where you make a scrape. If you've got a great area, make scrapes. And what that is you get the buck fever synthetic, the forehead gland scent, right? And you put that up on like the tip of a branch or up higher on the tree. And don't be shy with that stuff, that sprays. And then you kind of kick the ground a little bit underneath it and move the dirt around and pour the full rut liquid on the ground. And that's going to kind of, simulate the buck marking his territory, and it makes them very curious and want to see you, and they come back and check that all the time. It's great stuff. Again, it's Buck Fever Synthetics. They should sponsor the show, but they don't sponsor the show, and I don't have any promo codes on that. If you follow Troy Pottinger, he might have a promo code on that stuff. He is Mountain Man 33 or something on Instagram. If you find him, I think you can type in Troy Pottinger. But I do make scrapes, and I'm not shy with those scrapes. I make like a bunch of them, and for some reason, some produce well and some others don't. I also do it on my own property because I let my girls hunt on the. I personally don't really hunt on my property, but I do let my girls hunt here, and we'll make a bunch of scrapes, and it's just fun because I can make a scrape, and then I can set my tact cams up to watch that scrape, and like sometimes within an hour I've got a buck on that scrape that I've made, and so it does work well. Again, that's Buck Fever Synthetics, and you can get that stuff on like Amazon too. Just a couple other things, I go in there, I make some scrapes, I find an area where it looks like there's going to be deer, and I sit there, and the biggest thing is time. It gets really cold in the mountains in November. So make sure you're watching that you're not going to get like snowed in or too much snow once you get back to the pickup truck, that it becomes really dangerous coming off the mountain. Make sure you have chains on your truck. I pack extra really warm socks in my pack. And so when I'm hiking in, I'm going in kind of light, just regular wool socks, like those darn tough ones or whatever. Then once I get in my blind, I take my boots off and I put those heavier socks on, and then I put my boots back on. That really helps because I get cold feet. And other than that, yeah, get out there. The thing with deer hunting, especially with whitetail, I mentioned time. It just takes a lot of time. You can't expect to go set up a deer scrape on a Friday and sit there all day Saturday and then go home Sunday with a big buck. Okay, it really does take time. The bucks are going to react and behave differently in early November than they are in late November and mid-November and even early December. You're going to have, maybe some bucks that are super interested in your scrape in the first week or so of November, and all of a sudden they're going to lose interest and go elsewhere, and other bucks are going to show up. You'll have other bucks that will spend all November checking that same scrape. I can't explain it. I don't know. I don't know what does that, but those are the things that I do that have made me pretty successful with whitetail hunting. And I'm telling you, man, when you get a big whitetail coming in, whether it's to a rattle or he's coming in to check your scrape, or you maybe let off a little deer bleat, and that whitetail's coming in, you got to be smooth as ice. Don't have your rifle or your bow or whatever all like tangled up in your pack straps or something crazy. You really want to be ready, and you got to be smooth as ice. For example, I think most of you are going to use a rifle for this, which is totally fine. That's what I'm using this year. That buck might be 20 yards from you. And if you have squeaky connectors on your rifle sling, whatever those little, connectors are that can squeak, if that buck hears that little squeak, it's gone. You will not have a shot. If he hears you bolt around or chamber around, he's gone. If he hears your chair squeak a little bit, he's gone. Those little things, whitetail are super cagey. They're not like mule deer. Mule deer, you can get away with a lot of that kind of stuff. Other than like a giant mule deer, you're not going to have that. You got to be, they're just as cagey once they get to a certain age. And so those are the things. Just, super, super quiet. Move slow, steady. Get that rifle up into your shoulder as quietly as you can, and get that thing off of safety, and as smooth as you can. Get that lead into that deer, and you'll be in good shape. But if he hears any of that movement, he is not going to stick around. He's not going to give you a second chance, and you will never see him again. And so there you go, guys. Hopefully that helps you out. If you guys kill a big whitetail, hell, if you kill a little whitetail, hit me up. Let me know. Either email it to me at jim@thewesternhuntsman.com, or make sure you guys are following me on Instagram. That really helps the show for some reason. I don't know hardly anything about Instagram, but I get on there. I post stuff sometimes. But that is at the Western Huntsman. I'm also on X, formerly known as Twitter. That is at the Western Huntsman as well. Boy, I feel like I'm like a politician here. It's coming up to the end, and I've been giving all these speeches. So yeah, I appreciate you guys if you follow me there, and I try to keep everybody updated as to what the show's doing and whatnot. The other thing is, guys, I know I ask this a lot every few episodes or whatever, but good reviews really help the show. It really, really helps the show. And this show has grown so much because you guys have been so like cooperative and like I actually expected. I always joke around that I always get negative comments after each episode. That's not entirely true. I get a lot of them because I'm very opinionated. I understand. And I respect everybody else's opinion. And so I don't mind. I don't mind it. I wish people, like, if they disagreed with me, were more like, hey dude, I disagree with you and here's why, instead of, hey Jim, you're an idiot. You know, it's like kind of not cool. Some of you hurt my feelings. Not really. But, for the most part, everybody's been really positive. This show's been out, like almost 5 years now. Tons of downloads. It's really grown. I just really appreciate what you guys have done to help this show do what it's done, because I really do enjoy it. I love talking about hunting. I'm highly concerned for the future of hunting, and so that's why I do this. And together with you guys' support, we can keep doing it and keep giving you guys hot tips like the School of September episodes and this little Whitetail episode and all that kind of stuff, and also address some of the problems we face as hunters with the anti-hunting movement and some of these emotionally intoxicated folks that just can't seem to get a grip as to what the realities of hunting are. So, all that to say, if you support that, if you're on board with that, please write us a good review. It's more so than just hitting a little 5-star thing. It's way better if you just say something nice. Like, hey, great show, really enjoy it. It doesn't matter. Hit the 5-star and just like 1 or 2 lines. It really, really helps me. And I really do appreciate it. Other than that, guys, we are coming into like tag season and all that kind of stuff. Make sure you are checking out Eastman's, hunting journals and you're jumping on Tag Hub. Tag Hub is a great place to simplify where you're going to get your tags for the 2025 season. It's going to be here before we know it. And so make sure you check that out. I need to promote that a little bit more often. It's a super great tool. It really makes, like, I'm an idiot. I can't do all this research on my own. They've got it all in one spot at Tag Hub. It's like $10 a month or something like that. And it's worth every penny. So definitely check that out. And thanks again, guys, for tuning in. I really wish you well. For those of you still out hunting this year, November is a great time to be in the woods. I mean, it is a freaking great time. And so get out there and enjoy it. Keep me posted as to your successes and failures. I love hearing both, and I appreciate you tuning in. Love you guys lots. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon. You made it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Western Huntsman and write us a good review at Apple Podcasts. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.